welcome back. You're looking at the Omnivox channel. You're listening to Dimebag, and we are going to go into Chapter 2 of my favorite story, Isaac Asimov's Foundation. Starting directly into Chapter 2. Up until now, our story's main character, Gal Dornick, had been making a journey from where he was at to a new school at which he was going to be doing some work for a famous mathematician by the name of Harry Seldon. He has boarded a ship, he has flown across space, he has landed at Trantor, the location of the university where he will be working with the said mathematician. Chapter 2. The ship landed in a medley of noises. There was the far-off hiss of the atmosphere, cutting and sliding past the metal of the ship. There was the steady drone of the conditioners, fighting the heat of friction, and the slower rumble of the engines enforcing deceleration. There was the human sound of men and women gathering in the debarkation rooms, and the grind of the hoists, lifting baggage, mail, and freight to the long axis of the ship, from which they would later be moved along to their unloading platform. Gal felt the slight jar that indicated the ship no longer had an independent motion of its own. Ship's gravity had been giving way to planetary gravity for hours. Thousands of passengers had been sitting patiently in the debarkation rooms, which swung easily on yielding force fields to accommodate its orientation in the changing direction of the gravitational forces. Now, they were crawling down curving ramps through the large, yawning locks. Gal's baggage was minor. He stood at a desk, and it was quickly and expertly taken apart and put back together again. His visa was inspected and stamped. He himself paid no attention. This was Trantor. The air seemed a little thicker here, the gravity a bit greater than that on his home planet of Synax. But he would get used to that. He understood if he would get used to its... He wondered if he would ever get used to its immensity. Debarkation building was tremendous. The roof was almost lost in the heights. Gal could imagine the clouds could form beneath its immensity. He could see no opposite wall, just men and desks converging floor until it faded out into a haze. The man at the desk was speaking again. He sounded annoyed. He said, "Move on, Dornick." He had to open the visa look again before he remembered the name. Gal asked, Where? The man at the desk jerked a thumb. "Taxis to the right and third left." Gal moved, seeing the glowing twists of the air suspended in nothingness, reading, "Taxis to all points." A figure detached itself from anonymity and stopped at the desk as Gal left. The man at the desk looked up and nodded briefly. The figure nodded and returned, and followed the young immigrant. He was in time to hear Gal's destination. Gal found himself hard against a railing. The small sign said supervisor. The man, to whom the sign referred to, did not look up. He said, "Where to?" Gal wasn't sure, but even a few seconds' hesitation meant men queuing in line behind him. The supervisor looked up. "Where to?" Gal's funds were low, but this was the only one night, and then he would have a job. He tried to sound nonchalant. "A good hotel, please." The supervisor was unimpressed. "They're all good. Name one." Gal said desperately, "The nearest one, please." The supervisor touched a button. A thin line of light formed along the floor, twisting among the others, which brightened and dimmed in different colors and shades. A ticket was shoved into Gal's hands. It glowed faintly. The supervisor said, 1.12. Gal fumbled for the coins. He said, "Where do I go?" "Follow the light. The ticket will keep glowing so long as you're pointed in the right direction." Gal looked up and began walking. There were hundreds creeping across that vast floor, following their individual trails, sifting and straining themselves through intersection points to arrive at their respective destinations. His own trail ended. A man in glaring blue and yellow uniform, shining and new, in unstainable plastotextile, reached for his 2 bags. "Direct line to the Luxor," he said. The man who followed Gal heard that. He also heard Gal say, "Fine," and watched him enter that blunt-nosed vehicle. The taxi lifted straight up. Gal stared out the curved transparent window, marveling at the sensation of air flight within an enclosed structure, and clutching instinctively at the back of the driver's seat. The vastness contracted, and the people became ants in random distribution. The scene contracted further and began to slide backward. There was a wall ahead. It began high in the air and extended upwards out of sight. It was riddled with holes that were the mouths of tunnels. Gal's taxi moved towards one of them and plunged into it. For a moment, Gal wondered how his driver could pick one among the so many. There was only blackness now, with nothing past the flashing of a colored light signal to relieve the gloom. The air was full of a rushing sound. Gal leaned forward against deceleration, and the taxi popped out of the tunnel and descended to the ground level once more. "The Luxor Hotel," said the driver unnecessarily. He helped Gal with his baggage, accepted a 1/10 credit tip with businesslike air, picked up a waiting passenger, and was rising again. In all this, from the moment of debarkation, there had been no glimpse of the sky. And thus ends Chapter 2. This is my favorite book. This is The Foundation by Isaac Asimov. Read by Dimebag Darren. Visit with us again for Chapter 3. Bye for now.